90% of the people I speak to about training have made the same mistake, which limits how much muscle they're able to build. And that is changing the exercises they do in the gym far too frequently. Or program hopping, as you may have heard it called. And as with all training mistakes, your boy has made it as well many times. And simply put, you don't need to change the exercises you do in the gym that frequently. It's not going to turbocharge your growth, and it's not going to shock your muscles into developing, which I've heard people say so many times before. And if anything, changing your exercises around too much only just limits your growth, because you'll end up spending way too much time in the learning zone of an exercise, which is mostly bad for muscle growth, rather than the training zone on an exercise, which is obviously good for muscle growth. But we're going to get more onto that later. Right, so I want you to imagine this for a second. The only exercise you're able to do for your biceps for 1 whole year is a bog standard vanilla margarita style pizza seated dumbbell bicep curl. Palms up, 3 sets of 10, twice a week, and you can't do anything else. No cables, no barbells, no machines, no EZ bar, no TRX, although I'm not even sure you can do biceps on that. No bands. Can I think of anything else? No bodyweight exercises. Nothing. No fancy rep schemes. You have to do 3 sets of 10. Not 11, not 9. No drop sets either. Basically nothing else apart from doing 3 sets of 10 on that seated dumbbell bicep curl. For the other muscle groups, you can just do your normal thing, your normal schedule. Push, pull legs or full body. We'll just leave that for aside for a second. We're only concentrating on the biceps for this, so I can make my point. Okay, so you've done that for a year, you've done your seated dumbbell curl, you've trained 52 weeks of the year, because obviously you're not going to take any weeks off, only kidding. So the year's up, and here's what I think probably has happened. First one, and pretty obviously, you've got really good at that seated dumbbell curl. You've properly mastered that movement. You could do it with your eyes closed. You're basically now the seated dumbbell curl expert. If anyone asks you, that's what you specialize in. That movement is just completely second nature for you now. You go into the gym, you do your biceps, and you leave. All jokes aside, I actually literally used to do that when I first started training. Your biceps are going to be engaged the whole time. You're super stable. You're not thinking about 5 different coaching cues to do the exercise. You can just focus on smashing out your 3 sets of 10. Happy days. And 2, because you've got really good at that exercise, because of the repetition, you haven't done anything else for biceps, you've only been doing this one movement, relatively speaking, you're going to be using a lot of weight for this. Way more than before when you were only doing this exercise 3 months out of the year and doing cables, other exercises instead. And because you are that much better at it now, you'll have accumulated a lot more volume into the biceps over that year-long period because you're using a lot more weight than before. And all other variables are constant. Using 20 kilo dumbbells for this exercise over the year is going to yield you more muscle growth than doing the same thing but with the 16 kg dumbbells, assuming you're doing the same tempo, squeezing the muscle, technique, that kind of stuff. And lastly, number 3, that muscle group is now larger, the biceps. Because you've mastered it, because you've been using a lot of weight, it's grown more than before. Thanks to your new status as the dumbbell bicep curl expert. Maybe not Arnold or Chris Bumstead big, sure, but it's a lot bigger than before, and that's what we set out to achieve in the first place, building muscle. And before I get pulled up in the comments, you'll probably get a little bit bored having done the same exercise for 52 weeks of the year with no variation at all. I get it. Although I really doubt swapping the dumbbells for a cable is going to make the exercise way more interesting and exciting than just using the same implement. But hey, I could be wrong with that. You might love using the cable machine, and that's cool. You may also love using the machine. That's okay also. So that's one of the main arguments for wanting to tweak the exercises you do in the gym. Boredom. We're humans. We're not robots. Training needs to be somewhat interesting for you to keep going week on week, month on month. Although to be honest, if you're looking for pure enjoyment and excitement, you're probably not going to find that on the gym floor. So you need to accept that if you're taking your training seriously and you want to build muscle, you're going to have to forego some of that enjoyment in order to get the job done. There's also the argument that the muscle is going to get used to only doing one exercise for a long period of time. One set of joint forces going through the exercise, the same stimulus, more or less the same weight you're using, because you're not going to be able to increase the weight you're using on that seated dumbbell curl week on week. It'll probably be once a quarter or every 3 months, and the same amount of reps, and stop responding in a muscle building fashion. And yes, that's probably true, just not true enough for it to make a significant impact on your training. training. Because where those gains top out, if you're doing the same exercise over and over, probably coincides to where you're nearing your genetic limit anyway, your genetic potential. Because let's be honest, none of us are going to be building muscle through our 60s and 70s, even if we have 40 or 50 years of serious training behind us. At some point, things are going to start to plateau. So a good number to aim for is twice a year. Try and change your exercises twice a year if you're training hard and consistently to keep things fresh and interesting. And if you're not that consistent with your training, you can probably take that number down a little bit. But remember this, muscles are mechanical. They respond to tension placed upon them. They have zero idea what exercises you're actually doing. They don't have a webcam. They don't have a brain. They don't know that you're using a cable. They don't know you're using an EZ bar or a barbell. They don't know you're using a band for 4 sets of 21 reps. They have no idea. They only respond to mechanical tension, and you get good at that by becoming an expert in the exercise and then doing that regularly over time with a lot of weight. So remember earlier on in the video when I talked about a learning phase of an exercise and the training phase? Well, yeah, it's kind of important. Simply put, when you start doing a new exercise that you A, haven't done before, or B, haven't done for a lot of time, it will take you some time to get back to using your max weight again, right? You're not going to be able to just walk into the gym having not done an exercise for 2 months and go straight into using your max weight again. It doesn't work like that. Take the bicep curl, for example. You've been doing it for a year, you stopped doing it for a year, and then on that 3rd year, you won't just be able to go straight into using the 20 kilos again, assuming that's the weight you finished off with. It will take you 10 sets, 20 sets, maybe even 30 or 40 sets of learning the exercise again to get back to where you left off. Let's call that the learning phase. And in the learning phase, you're using sub-maximal weights compared to what you were using before. But if your goal is to build muscle, you want to be using the most amount of weight you can do, given you're doing it with good technique. But if your goal is to build muscle, then we don't want to be spending too much time in the learning phase because you're using suboptimal weights, and therefore the volume is going to be lower and you're placing less mechanical tension on the muscle that you're trying to build. A bit every now and again is okay when you want to keep things fresh, when you need to change up the routine a little bit, but don't go program hopping. Otherwise you'll be spending half the year in the learning zone and only half the year in the training zone, compared to the example we used earlier where you spend the whole year in the training zone and make a lot of progress. Building muscle is slow enough and difficult as it is, so you don't want to make things even harder. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit the thumbs up button and I'll see you in the next one.